everyone. My name is Robin Kitchen. I am the manager for Learning and Growth at Sherbrooke in Central Haven, and I would like to welcome you to Untie the Spirit Module 4. So just a quick review on what we've covered through this course already and where we have gotten to today. And so Module 1 in Untie the Spirit is called Shifting Our Thinking. And this is where, again, we talked about changing the way that we think about people whose minds have changed. And we learned from Dr. Al Power a new definition of dementia that takes all the negative stigmas and labels away. And he teaches us that dementia is a shift in the way the person experiences the world around them. And so it's just a shift in the way they experience their world. In Module 2, we talked about well-being and how we all want to feel well-being in our lives. We reviewed the 7 Eden domains of well-being and how these needs are needs that all human beings have, and we need to have them met in order to experience well-being. We also talked about a commitment to person-directed living and thinking about the words that we use, because words are powerful and words make worlds. And then Module 3 is when we talked about spirit-breaking behaviors. We talked about a number of spirit-breaking behaviors, but really highlighted the use of psychotropic medications and forcing care. And then we shifted and talked, of course, about spirit lifters and how there are so many different things that we can do every day in our care and support of people that are going to lift their spirits. We also talked about the word behavior as a label with regard to persons living with dementia and how we need to shift our thinking about that label behavior, and that at Sherbrooke and Central Haven we think about what's happening for a person living with dementia as an altered response, a different way of responding, and really what we're seeing from that person is an attempt to communicate an unmet need. And then that brought us to our talk about detective work and how that's a really important part of the work that we do with elders, is that we need to figure out what are they trying to tell us? What is their unmet need? And we need to put that detective hat on, and we need to consider all possibilities. We need to consider, is it something physical, a physical need? Is it something in the environment? Is it an emotional need? Is it something related to the task at hand, or is it something related to their life story? Or could it be our approach? And that brings us to Module 4, which is called Approach is Key. And so is what we're seeing in terms of a response from an elder living with dementia, is it an unmet need, or is the person responding to our approach? We have a great ability to influence the success of a person living with dementia just based on our own approach. And so through this module, we're going to talk about successful approaches. So I want to start off by talking about communication. Nonverbal body language accounts for over 85% of messages that we send, which is a lot. And so nonverbal body language is our look on our face, the tone of our voice, and our body posture. And so we really need to pay attention to this stuff in our interactions with elders. How we deliver a message is very important. You know, if you have a smile on your face or a frown, the person's going to respond differently based on that. Talking too fast can be an issue. When somebody's living with dementia, they experience what's called a delay in processing of information, which means it takes the person a few seconds longer to process the stimulus and come up with an appropriate response. But, you know, because as staff, we don't have that delay happening, we can slip into rushing people really easily. And whether it's rushing actions or speaking too quickly or jumping from one topic to another too fast, you know, that can create an issue with communication. Not asking for permission, so not asking the person if it's okay. Permission is absolutely essential. Not listening to them. This can create an issue as well. Or not being patient with the person. And we need to remember here that what you think is what you show. You can tell when someone's losing their patience, and elders can tell that too. And then lastly, we need to think about ensuring that our body language matches words, because if there isn't a match between our body language and our words, the messages we send to elders aren't going to make any sense. Sometimes too, it can be actually a lack of communication that creates a response from an elder. There's a really great example about a situation where staff were assisting an elder to have a bath, and they were in the tub room, and the tub was full of water, and they were going to assist him into the tub, but they didn't explain anything to him. They didn't explain that he was there to have a bath, and they didn't, give him that time for processing any of that. And essentially, as they were attempting to help him into the tub, he engaged in a physically protective response, and he panicked and got very distraught. And afterwards, he said, "I thought they were going to cook me in that." And, that's a really great example of not communicating with the person and the impact that can have on the person's responses. So we need to ensure that we are informing elders of what we're doing, that we're mindful of our nonverbal body language, that we're giving time, that we're listening and respecting choices. So we talked about the importance of nonverbal body language. And we've always said at Sherbrooke, the look on your face really does matter. And I love this grumpy cat picture. It's kind of cute, but really, the look on your face is so important. And if you think of yourself out in Saskatoon community somewhere, and maybe you're in trouble and you need help, and you see two people that you could approach. You see one person who's got a smile on their face, and you see another who's got a frown on their face. I'm pretty sure I can predict who you would pick to go to for help if you were in trouble. We're going to choose the smiling face. That's human nature. And so for us in our care and support of people living with dementia, we need to be that smiling face for people all the time so they feel safe and comfortable approaching us no matter what their need is. And so what we are wanting is the heliotropic effect. And the heliotropic effect is the effect that the sun has on flowers, in that flowers are drawn to the warmth and light of the sun. And this is what we want to create for elders, so that they are drawn to our warmth and drawn to us. That is the heliotropic effect. So let's talk about successful phrases. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And what that means is that we are making intentional use of positive language, because when we use positive language, we're more likely to elicit a positive response. And so, for example, when you are introducing yourself to someone, saying, "Hello, I'm Robin, I'm here to help you today," rather than saying something like, "Oh, hi, do you remember me? I was here yesterday." Or, "Good morning, it's so wonderful to see you," rather than, "Hi, how are you today?" Using the word invite is another awesome way to approach people. Asking someone using the word invite, "May I invite you to join me?" There's something special about an invitation, and that never goes away as human beings. And so that's another positive word. If you are asking someone something about a part of their story, saying something like, "Well, that's interesting, tell me more about that," rather than asking a question that relies directly on their memory, like, "Who are those people in that picture?" Keeping it open-ended and positive. If someone has difficulty accepting care and help from us, sometimes it's our approach, and rephrasing it using "what if" can be really helpful here. What if I give you a hand to freshen up? Or what if I help get you started and then you can do the rest? Then just saying to someone, "Why don't we go for a walk outside? It's going to be so much fun. There's music out there. It's a beautiful day." And the term "I wonder" is also a real positive approach. Saying to somebody, "I wonder if you might like to join me on a walk this afternoon." That can be another really great phrase and positive strategy. And does this stuff really work? Yes, it does. It's not going to work 100% of the time. There's no one strategy that's going to work 100% of the time, but these approaches will help you to be successful. So, throughout the Untie the Spirit course, we've talked about the importance of being person directed and taking direction from elders and maximizing autonomy and choice. And just a little bit about choices. Choices are only choices if people can be successful at making them. And our goal is always success for the elder. And so, how we offer choices is really important. For example, if you approached an elder and said to them in the morning, "Would you like to pick out your clothes today?" For someone who is living with dementia and trying to make sense of their world around them, that could be an overwhelming question or task for them. They would need to know, what am I doing today? Where are my clothes? Is it winter, summer? They would need to know so many things that it could be overwhelming. And a default answer can often be no in that situation. And you could walk away from that and say, well, I offered them the choice and they didn't want to make it. But did you really offer them a choice that was fair, that based on their abilities, that they could make successfully? Probably not. And that's where we need to be really intentional here about how we offer choices. Again, we want people to be successful. And so if you went into that person's closet and you pulled out 2 shirts and you held them up and you said to them, "Today, would you like to wear the red blouse or the blue blouse?" They would be much more likely to be able to make a decision successfully there. And so that's really how we empower people. We meet them where they're at and we adjust our approach based on their abilities to maximize their success. So let's talk about some basic successful approaches. So if you're at somebody's bedroom door, always knock, identify who you are, and ask for permission to enter, and then wait for permission to enter. Reintroduce yourself as many times as necessary. We can't assume that someone's going to remember that we were there to help them in the bathroom an hour earlier, so always reintroduce yourself. Sit down, be face to face at eye level with the person or even below. Create the eye of the hurricane. In the eye of the hurricane, it's completely calm. So if we're going to be successful at engaging an elder and communicating effectively, we need to create that calm space where we're going to optimize success. We want to optimize hearing and vision. Again, know each elder. Be mindful of visual changes associated with dementia so that we can optimize success. Be present and focused when you're in the moment with somebody. Center yourself, stay focused, take a deep breath, and remember the importance of that interaction, the significance of it. Speak slowly and clearly, not necessarily loudly. Sometimes if someone doesn't respond immediately, you think they didn't hear you and you talk louder, but that isn't necessarily the case when a person's living with dementia. Again, we touched on earlier how most people living with dementia have a delay in the processing of information. So it just takes them a few seconds longer to process what you said and come up with an appropriate response. And so allow that time for processing. Be mindful of eye contact, facial expression, nonverbal cues. Again, the look on your face really does matter. Project calm, kindness, and empathy. Put yourself in their shoes. Do what you can to make them comfortable in that moment. Use appropriate touch, always and only with permission, and then actively listen to the person. Validate their feelings, be authentic and genuine with them, and take cues from them. Okay, so let's talk about success with personal care. One of the things that we talk a lot about is the whisper zone. And the whisper zone is about 6 to 8 inches away from our bodies. It's that really close zone that typically is reserved for people with whom we have an intimate relationship with. And when we are providing personal care to elders living in long-term care, we are entering people's whisper zones repeatedly to do that. And we have to recognize as care partners how difficult it must be for elders to have us in their whisper zone like that. And that we have to recognize that this is probably a really stressful situation for the person. And we want to do whatever we can to make them feel safe and comfortable and not add stress to that stressful situation. One of the things that GPA teaches us is that if we have more than one care partner providing care, that you always designate one person to be the voice. And they call it one voice and four hands in the room. If you have too many people talking to the elder at once and it's already a stressful situation, it can be really overwhelming and can lead to distress. Something else we need to consider in our approach with personal care is that we need to find the best time for that person. This is very individual. We cannot make people fit into our schedules and our plans. We have to adjust our plans and our schedules based on each elder and what is best for them in that day. Reintroduce yourself when you go in to provide care. Don't assume again that the elder is going to remember that you were there an hour earlier. So reintroduce yourself, let them know that you're there to help them, but avoid questions that may cause distress, like, do you remember me? If the person's struggling with memory and you ask that question, they may feel like they should know the answer and they don't, and it can actually cause distress. We want to maximize autonomy and choice when we are providing personal care. We want to get the elder involved in making choices and helping with whatever they can. This will boost self-esteem. Sometimes elders can only tolerate us, for short periods of time in their whisper zone, and we need to be respectful of that. And this is where we sometimes need to break things down into bite-sized chunks. So we provide pieces of care at a time, right? And we come and go as needed depending on the elder. We also want to make sure we treat everything they view as their personal possessions respectfully. And so when we're in somebody's room and we're providing them with care, it's already a stressful situation. We don't want to do anything that the person may perceive as disrespectful in any way. Renegotiate rapport as often as needed. And what this refers to is that if someone's struggling with memory, they may agree to have a bath, but by the time you get down to the tub room, they may have forgotten why they're there. And that's what renegotiating rapport means. We need to check back in with people throughout the process to ensure that they're still okay with it. And of course, we need to apply stop and go as needed. And the stop and go approach comes from gentle persuasive approaches, and it aligns with our never force care. And so if an elder gives you an indication that they don't want whatever it is that you're doing, we stop, because whatever we're doing can wait, and we go and we come back later and we try again. But we never force care. So validation therapy is our go-to strategy whenever we are looking to reassure a person living with dementia, when they are looking for someone or something that we can't immediately provide them. Validation is our go-to. And validation is the process of communicating with someone who has dementia by validating and respecting their feelings in whatever time or place is real to them, even though it may not correspond with our here and now reality. And of course, validation therapy was founded by Naomi Fail. Validation is a very respectful way of reassuring a person. And it is the opposite of reality orientation, which we talked about in Module 3 as a spirit-breaking behavior, where in reality orientation, we are correcting a person's sense of reality. But in validation therapy, we're actually being respectful of the person's feelings in the moment. And what validation therapy looks like is this. If a person is looking for their mother, and we know that their mother died 35 years ago, again, we're not going to tell them that. That's reality orientation. It causes great distress and grief and trauma. Instead, we're going to jump into their world and we're going to just join them where they're at. We're going to validate their feelings and invite them to reminisce about the person that they're missing. And so we would say, it sounds like you really love your mother. Tell me about her. And then we would just follow that conversation wherever it goes. Validation is, again, our go-to strategy. Whenever someone's looking for a person or a place or something that we can't immediately provide them. Another example is an elder who is waiting for their kids to come off the school bus. And we know their kids are long grown up. We're not going to tell them that. Instead, we're going to jump in their world. And we're going to say, it sounds like you really love your kids. Tell me about your kids. And we're going to have a conversation about their kids. By doing that, we actually can meet the person's unmet need. You know that they're missing their children, they're missing their mother. And by having that opportunity to talk about their mother, their children, or whoever they're missing, we create an opportunity for them to have that need met, to connect again with that person or place. Same with somebody looking for their home. It sounds like you really love your home. Tell me about your home, and have them lead a conversation about home. Validation is very respectful and our go-to to keep in our pockets when we're supporting people living with dementia. So another important consideration in our support of people living with dementia is where they're at with their social inhibitions. So social inhibitions are those guiding filters that we all have, that teach us kind of societal norms and what's appropriate and how to act, and they're like those guiding filters for all of us as human beings. And as people's dementia progresses, those social inhibitions begin to lift. And so people are no longer as regulated by those guiding filters. However, it's really important for us to remember that every person living with dementia is going to be at a different place with their social inhibitions. And if people's social inhibitions are still intact, our approach, we have to be cautious that they don't interpret how we are treating them as demeaning or patronizing or childlike. They may be very protective of that as their social inhibitions are still in the early stages of lifting. And so we need to really know each elder and know where they're at so we don't cause distress. But again, as a person's dementia progresses, these social inhibitions, these guiding filters, really start to lift. And then, they're not regulated by them anymore. And so, they don't feel bad about things or embarrassed or feel shame or guilt. These filters no longer guide their actions. And, they need us to continue to look upon them with unconditional positive regard no matter what. And so depending on where a person is at with their social inhibitions, it'll affect our approach with them. And so we really need to individualize this and again really know each elder and be respectful of where they are at on their journey. So what about distress? In our response to distress, one of the very first things when an elder is in distress that we need to think about is we need to think, is this an expression of an unmet need? We need to put our detective hats on and we need to figure out if there is an unmet need here. With our approach to distress, again, consider distress to be legitimate. Remember, no matter what the person is experiencing or where the reality is in that moment, it is absolutely real to them. And, we don't want to say something like, oh, don't worry about it. I don't know if you've ever been upset about something and somebody says, don't worry. It is not helpful and can sometimes make it worse. And so, again, always validate feelings for people. I can see that you're very upset and I'm here to help you. When you approach somebody in distress, You know, remain calm and centered, and approach alone. And what we mean by that is, you know, don't bring in an army when someone's in distress because they could feel more threatened. And so always consider safe positioning for yourself and maybe not getting too close, but approach calm, centered, and very gentle. Again, GPA teaches us if you do have more than one person involved, always designate one voice and four hands. Be authentic and compassionate. Be mindful of your voice, your face, your body language. Remember that words won't be heard until you connect with the person. And so you need to validate their feelings. That's the way to connect. So again, I can see that you're really upset and I want to help you. I'm here to help you. So making sure that you validate and connect first. And that's that validating emotion. It's respectful, it builds trust. The person needs to know that they're being heard, and then they may be more willing to accept help. And when there is a protective response with somebody who's really angry and in distress, of course, right away we need to be thinking, you know, what is the cause? What's the unmet need? What's the trigger? Meet the need if at all possible in that moment. Ensure that we're providing safety for everyone around, right? So giving the person space, keeping other people out of that space, and then staying calm and centered and working to restore calm. When we're working to restore calm, remember only one person interacts. Keep clear lines of sight. You know, this is where we need to make sure that we have a safe way to back out of the situation should things escalate again. Take the message out of your face and put it back in your words here. When someone's in distress, you don't want to be overly positive and smiling at them, right? We need to kind of match a little bit in terms of that. When you're interacting with someone, stay at eye level or below. We want to restore power to the person. That's our goal here. Keep a calm, steady voice. Again, avoiding those smiles or that high-pitched sing-song voice, you know, it may be misinterpreted and trigger distress again. And don't argue or dispute. You know, instead we need to, again, validate the distress. I can see that you are upset and I want to help you. You know, we don't want to say something like, oh, calm down, because that is not respectful and not helpful. Approach is key. In Module 4, we talked about a number of successful approaches. We talked about successful approaches with communication, basic approaches, successful approaches with personal care, using validation, and approaching persons who are in distress. And we know that our approach will greatly influence the success of a person living with dementia. And this quote on this slide teaches us that they may not remember your name or what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And there's a great little story that I want to wrap up with that was told by a geriatrician at a conference. A doctor of a woman living with dementia had to reintroduce himself every time he saw her. One day he put a thumbtack in his hand so it would poke her when he introduced himself. It hurt, and she quickly moved her hand away. The next time they met, when he extended his hand to introduce himself, she quickly drew her hand away. She didn't remember who he was, but she remembered how he made her feel. And so back to this message on the slide. They may not remember your name or what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel. So that brings us to the end of Module 4 and the end of the Untie the Spirit online course. When you go back into the course, there's a video that we want you to watch called She Calls Me Raymond. And there is a learning checkpoint quiz. And once you've completed that, you'll be able to get your certificate as well in the course. I want to thank you for taking the time to complete this course. I want to thank you for your passion and your commitment to the elders who live at Sherbrooke and Central Haven, and to being open to shifting your thinking and approaches with regard to people who are living with dementia. Thank you and take care.